This is the Baseball Tonight podcast for Wednesday, February 25th, 2026. And today will be better than yesterday. I'm Buster Olney. Taylor Schwenk is working from the Schwenk Studios. And meanwhile, Quinny, my dog, has taken this opportunity to just start barking like crazy. What's going on, Taylor? How do you deal with this with Dolly?
Buster, you need to barricade your door better, but I guess the folks on YouTube, they might like to see the dogs now. So this is something we would just describe it before, but now we can,
I knew it.
See Dolly.
Just came barging in. Quinny, come on up here. Come on up. Come on
Show
up,
the people
sweetie.
at home, Buster. Let's see her. A star in the making here. We got a lot of stars on the show today, but
she definitely wants to be part of the show.
Oh, yeah.
Barking like crazy. All right, let's get to the top of the first. All right, that Paul Hembekides, of course, a researcher at ESPN, content producer on the show Get Up. Hembo, how you doing?
Buster, I'm doing okay. I have to admit, though, I've been snowbound in New York City for the last 2 days, and all that's left is this undershirt that I'm wearing. So this is actually the best I could do. Apologize to our YouTube crowd. We're making our big YouTube debut this week, and all I have for you is literally some long johns, which I'm wearing, the last clean item of clothing in my entire bag.
So I was imagining you shoveling, but you're not doing any shoveling because you're not at home, right?
Correct. So my lovely wife sent me a picture yesterday of an entirely shovel driveway, which I have to imagine was either passive-aggressive or just aggressive because I'm here snowbound in New York City. She's none too happy, Buster, so I'm going to go home today and I'm sure feel that wrath.
Okay. All right, let's dive into the news of the day. Chris Sale gets a extension for 2027 with the Atlanta Braves, $27 million, plus a $30 million option for 2028. I feel like this is a perfect situation for the Braves and for Chris Sale. For the Braves, you lock up one of the best pitchers in baseball, a future Hall of Famer, to a short-term deal. You know, the old saying in baseball is there's no such thing as a bad one-year contract. And from Chris Sale's perspective, he, of course, went to school down in that area. He gets to be at home, close to home during this time. And it feels like he'll just keep on taking these one-year deals, basically, until he decides he retires.
Yeah, Buster, I think you have that exactly right. I mean, Chris Sale, when he is at his best or even close to it and reasonably healthy, is inarguably a top 10 pitcher in baseball still. Perhaps the most important person on that Braves roster considering the injuries that they've suffered. And I think you and I are going to have to start having a conversation, perhaps as soon as right now, as to his place in the all-time standings, which is to say he's among the best left-handed pitchers of all time. I mean, there are certainly guys like Lefty Grove and Randy Johnson and Warren Spahn and Steve Carlton that he's not touching. But on his current trajectory, Buster, I think we're living in a world in which we could imagine Chris Sale ending his career with the Braves or otherwise as a top 10 left-handed pitcher in the history of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm trying to remember when, because you and I have been doing these top 10 lists. We've been collaborating throughout. And where did you have Chris Sale? I think you had him like 6, right?
I had
in your
Chris
top
Sale
10 list, and I think I
That's
landed
right.
him at like 9 or 10 when I turned in the list of starting pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had a crush on Chris Sale because the stuff is just unbelievable. And even last year in an injury-compromised season, he was awesome. I had him 7th, sandwiched between Logan Webb and Max Fried. And look, so long as Chris Sale is reasonably healthy, that's exactly where he belongs. And the stuff still plays up. I mean, he doesn't throw his fastball quite like he used to, but that slider is still absolutely unbelievable. And look, I mean, he's going to creep past like 60 WAR this year. The Braves would not have given him this contract extension if Alex Anthopoulos, their GM, didn't have good reason to believe that he is likely to remain healthy. Obviously, you're always flipping a coin with pitchers, especially pitchers that have had injury history, but that's most all pitchers these days. So I think you have this thing exactly right. He's the right guy to lead this rotation into the future. And if he had hit free agency after this season, a healthy season, he'd have done a lot better than this. So at least to some extent, I view this as being a team-friendly contract.
The second big topic in the top of the first inning are the rankings of the corner outfielders that we're posting on ESPN.com. That article will come out on Wednesday. And I must say, the editors that I work for, they're mean. I mean, they're just unreasonable because when we came up with the list of top 10s, they decided they wanted to squeeze together the left fielders and the right fielders, which means that, you have to choose in this ridiculously deep group. I mean, we've been talking about how the shortstop list is so deep. Well, when you combine the left and right fielders, all of a sudden, you're making choices near the bottom of the top 10, Wilyer Abreu and Seiya Suzuki, and just on and on and on. I think the most fun that I've had in working in this group now of corner outfielders is, what do you do with Roman Anthony? Okay, because Aaron Judge is going to be one. Newsflash: Juan Soto is going to be right near the top of the list. Corbin Carroll's going to be right near the top of the list. So if you combine the left and right fielders, where would you put Roman Anthony? I reached out. I think you'll like this story. I reached out to a guy you may have heard of, Chipper Jones, who when he played, I loved to go to the Braves camp and ask him about different players and get sort of feedback on him, because he's a great player. He was a great player, but he also has a great scouting eye. Like, he would give such specific detail on what he liked about a young player or didn't like about a young player. I can remember when Freddie Freeman showed up in the Braves camp, he was like, yeah, he's going to be an all-time great player. And he talked about how well his swing would play. So yesterday I texted him and I said, hey, what do you think of Roman Anthony? And he said, give me about 20 minutes. I'm going to go and watch video. And so he came back and he texted and he talked about, he said, I'm not going to lie, I really like him. And Chipper's understated. And he went through the approach at the plate and he went through his stance. And he wondered why, a high rate of strikeouts in his first 300 plate appearances. And he said, that just might be getting used to the league. So he absolutely echoed a lot of what I'm hearing from other people in the league, which is, J.P. Ricciardi, former general manager of the Blue Jays, mentioned to me that if he stays healthy, Roman Anthony is going to be an all-time great Red Sox player, which is a high bar when you're talking about Ted Williams and Carl Yastrzemski and David Ortiz. Other people remarking on his remarkable plate discipline. So with that in mind, where would you put Roman Anthony in the top 10 corner outfielders in baseball?
What unbelievable context that is, Buster. To say that's even on the list of options for him says all you need to know about his
And he's
talent.
21 years old. As you and I are talking, he's 21.
I mean, a year ago this time, he was getting ready to start the season in the minor leagues. That's a remarkable thing to say about the kid. That's a really challenging question that you just asked me, Buster. I would say, top ahead, I would put him 7th behind Judge, Soto, Carroll, Tatis, Acuna, and Tucker, but there isn't anyone else that I would put ahead of him. Not Jackson Chourio, not his teammate Jarren Duran, not Wyatt Langford in Texas. To me, I think that's about as low as I can put him because, look, I see a lot of the same stuff that these people are telling you that they see in him. I mean, when you think about the components of hitting, you want to hit strikes, you want to hit strikes hard, and you want to hit strikes in the air. Last year, it was a 20% chase rate and a 13% walk rate. That produced a 396 on base again at the age of 21. That is unheard of stuff. Buster, 60% of his balls in play last year were hit 95 plus. That's Judge, Stanton, Ohtani, Yordan, Kyle Schwarber range, again, from a rookie. Now, the one thing that he's lacking right now is the ability to hit strikes hard in the air. It's not much of a launch angle. It's 7 degrees last year. It's only 10 if you isolate his hard hit balls, which is to say that is usually the last component, as you well know, of so many of these great hitters is elevating the ball, lifting the ball, and hitting the ball at optimal angles. But I think we're living in a world in which he's going to lead off for this team this year. And if you told me he gets 600 plate appearances, at worst, it's down ballot MVP votes because there's no hole in his game whatsoever. It's just a matter of time before he can slug something that rhymes with 600.
And Red Sox manager Alex Cora has said he will be his leadoff hitter this year. That's his plan. You have not seen my top 10 list, okay, as we speak. All I'm going to say is when you see it tomorrow morning, and run through your top 7 again in the corner outfielders.
Yep, Judge, Soto, Carroll, Tatis, Acuna, Tucker, and then Roman Anthony.
You are going to laugh when you see my list tomorrow. Okay. I'm not going to tell you what's on it, but obviously, as they say, a really interesting question, where do you put Roman Anthony on the list? I've had fun the last couple of days in watching exhibition games on the MLB Network. And there have been, yesterday I was watching the Padres against the Brewers, and there were some ABS challenges. This is going to be top of mind for us all throughout spring training, just as the pitch clock was a couple of years ago. Who are some hitters in your eyes who are going to benefit from the ABS challenge system?
Buster, there are 2 types of hitters that are going to disproportionately benefit, and they are super short ones and super tall ones. More specifically,
Jose Altuve. So you're saying Jose Altuve and Aaron Judge?
Oh, you have identified both guys I'm using as examples, Buster. It's almost like you and I have done this before. So here's what I did, Buster. I looked at players that stand 5'7" or shorter and 6'6" or taller, because we have now 16 years of data in tracking this stuff that say that umpires are remarkably good between those extremes. But then when I put all these hitters in the short bucket, what I discovered was that for about every 100 pitches that you see, you lose about 3.5 strikes per 100, mostly because sort of like the letters-ish, you might say, is a blind spot for umpires. I'll use Jose Altuve as our example. This is a player that has lost 300 strikes in his career, we can estimate, by virtue of his height and his height alone. All right, so that's the short guys. The tall bucket, you mentioned Aaron Judge as a good example. Just for some context here, over the last 5 years, Aaron Judge has taken 343 out-of-zone strikes, more than any hitter in the major leagues. 343 of them,
Jeez.
26 of those with 2 strikes. What I learned when analyzing these hitters in the tall bucket is that for every 100 pitches that you see, you lose about 1.5 strikes. All this to say, Buster, generally speaking, I think very few hitters are going to be disproportionately impacted by this stuff, but it's no surprise that umpiring guys on the extremes has proven to be the most challenging. So you think about Jose Altuve and you think about Judge and other players that look like them, those are the ones, especially those with shrewd command of the strike zone, have most to gain by the ABS.
So I am, at least when I was last measured when I was like 20 or 21 years old, I'm 5'7" 3/4", and I'm markedly taller than Jose Altuve. Okay, in our conversations, I can feel him sort of looming over him. There was a game we had on Sunday Night Baseball in recent years, and I think it was Eduardo Perez said, Altuve is so good at hitting high fastballs, and I blurted out, and I almost regretted it when I said it. What choice does he have? because right where he is, and I agree with you. We're going to be talking with Aaron Boone coming up, and one of the questions that I'm going to ask him is, what latitude is he going to give Judge in terms of using the ABS challenge? Because I think Judge has a great sense of the strike zone, commanded the strike zone from his perspective, and I'm really curious about how Judge will use it, right? Will he use a challenge in the first 3 innings? Because whenever you watch the Yankees game, you could see the umpires really struggle with the strike zone.
And the data back that up. Aaron Boone also struggles when Aaron Judge gets those pitches called at his shins below his knee. And I'm wondering if he's, instead of yelling at the umpires this season, is going to be yelling, "Judgy, challenge that," which, is not allowed. I think Aaron Judge is going to have levity to do this basically whenever he wants. And Buster, the only pushback that I'll provide you in doing as much reading about this as I can, based on the fact that this is all still very much happening in real time, I don't think the inning makes any difference whatsoever. To me, it's exclusively count leverage. If you're dealing with a decisive count, which is to say ball 4 or strike 3, I don't care if it's in the 2nd inning or the 8th inning. Now, of course, the score would impact this. I don't think
Right.
it would be wise to challenge something if you're down 9 or up 9 necessarily, although it might not hurt much. All this to say, I think that is the most important thing by a long shot. Is there a decisive pitch, one that ends in at bat, that is going to swing? That ultimately, regardless if it's in the beginning of the game or the end of the game, that's what you're going to see teams attack. Very infrequently are you going to see a 1-1 pitch challenge, I think, unless we're talking late and close and it's Juan Soto up at the plate who feels so strongly.
What do you want me to ask Booney coming up in relation to the ABS?
So I want to ask him if he's going to stop sort of rising up on the ejections leaderboard for managers all time. He recently passed Dusty Baker, who we knew was a manager forever. But in all seriousness, Aaron Boone has made a living over the last 10 years or so as Yankees manager of giving the umpires a hard time, and rightfully so. He's sitting there on the open side of Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, seeing ball after ball called strike after strike. And so the dynamic of Aaron Boone in the dugout is going to change dramatically. So I'm curious how many times we're going to see him ejected this season, given the fact that the umps can look over and say, "Hey, you guys are going to challenge that or not?"
I think that's exactly what they're going to do. I've had a lot of conversations with people, I'll just say on the umpire side. I think that is the perfect response. You challenging? No? Okay. And so I'm really curious about what Booney thinks about all this, because that, as you know, it feels like that our awareness of Booney in the dugout is so much around the strike zone, right? Savage is in the box, the phrase that he coined. Konnor Griffin is a player that you are excited about, the Pirates' young shortstop. We had a conversation, the podcast on Monday, about how this is a golden era of shortstop. And there are people, when we talked to Kylie McDaniel early this spring, I mean, they feel like he has a chance to be one of the great ones. What about you?
We overuse the term generational talent, Buster.
Yeah.
But in Konnor Griffin's case, I think it actually applies. I'm just marveling at what he did last season. He slashed 333, 415, 527 with 65 steals. He did so at an 83% clip across 3 levels at the age of 19, while dramatically improving his defense at shortstop. So, Buster, I just had to run this and see who else can we find in the last 20 years that did anything like this. So here's what I looked up. I looked up teenagers in a season with a WRC plus of 150 or higher as a proxy for how well they hit. Guys that stole at least 50 bases for a proxy of, how well they run. And I eliminated those who played rookie ball as my proxy for maturity, Buster. And that spat out a list of only 3 players, one of whom, of course, is Konnor Griffin, with 65 steals and a 165 WRC plus last year across 3 levels. He reached
Wow.
Double-A, as you know. I got 2013 Byron Buxton, who did that at 19 years old. He stole 55 games with a 167 WRC plus across 2 levels. And Mike Trout in 2010 is the only other one. At 18 years old, Trout stole
Jeez.
56 bases with a 150 WRC plus. I mean, this is, at least across the last 2 decades, all we have. Obviously, Konnor Griffin is doing this, as I mentioned, as a shortstop. And I want to make it clear. I mean, if he becomes Byron Buxton, that would be a pretty nice outcome. It's 30 career WAR. If he became Mike Trout, that would be like a 99th percentile outcome because that's one of the 24 greatest baseball players that ever lived. But, prospect heads are telling me it's 40 homer, 40 steal potential in the big leagues with plus defense at shortstop. That's A-Rod. That's an 8-win player. We've practically never seen anything like it. So suffice it to say that I am over the moon with optimism as to what this kid could be. And I think there's a meaningful chance to believe that it's going to look awfully good, awfully quickly based on the trajectory that he showed last season.
Before you go, give me the team that you've seen in recent years that has taken advantage of market value in your eyes.
I think what we saw the Marlins do this offseason was ingenious. I think it was a good return for Ryan Weathers, but I think it was a great return for Edward Cabrera, trading him after the first 100-inning season, Buster, of his career. Look, he's a model darling. The Cubs have access to the same data that the Marlins do, but what the Cubs don't have is all that health information, and I would be awfully concerned if I were a Cubs fan, getting someone who, at best, you'd say has a D health grade, someone that has reached the DL in his career 8 different times. Meanwhile, you traded away Owen Casey, who has enormous big raw power, whose swing and miss was curbed throughout the course of last season. And just doing a bit of a retrospective here of the offseason, that might be the one move where a team really captured exceptional value, because in the Marlins case, they're one of the few teams that can actually trade away from a surplus of young starting pitching, and in meanwhile, acquire a Kyle Stowers-like talent, someone who OPS 900 for them last year, and insert him into the middle of the lineup into an outfield of an ascending young team. Of all the teams that operated in that world this offseason, I think that move and that team might have been the very best one.
So I had your thoughts in my mind when I was putting together the list, the top 10 corner outfielders. Stowers, I'm not going to tell you where he is on that list, but he certainly came up after his excellent year last year, and he's 28 years old. And I kind of, when I thinking about that, now he's got 2+ years service time, so they control him for 4 more seasons. And there's talk in Miami, do you give him a contract extension? Or, to your point, would you consider putting him out on the marketplace during the course of the summer because you want to take advantage of his value? As we know, Peter Bendix came from the Tampa Bay Rays, who have been excellent at doing this throughout the history. I think fans don't necessarily like it because you fall in love with a player like Stowers. If you're sitting in Peter Bendix's shoes, what would you do?
I'm going to give him 2 options. You're either going to sign this piece of paper that we can all agree is a team-friendly extension, considering the fact that you've had only one good big league season, or I'm going to shop you like I shop around everybody else. Ultimately, the way that they operate in Miami, as you well know, Buster, everyone is an asset. Everyone has surplus value attached to them. And I can't imagine a scenario in which Kyle Stowers, coming off a year in which he had a 912 OPS with as much service time as you just described, is going to have much more value than he has right now. That's the game they're playing. So either I'm extending you into your early 30s and we're going to get a lot of surplus value from that, or you're like Sandy Alcantara and everybody else on the trade block come July 1st, because that's how we have to operate.
All right, Hembo, thanks for doing this. I will forward your question to Booney.
Later, friends.
Aaron Boone is the manager of the Yankees. Booney, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Hope springs eternal. So, always a good time of the year, and feel like we're off to a good start.
All right, we just got done talking with Paul Embikides about the impact of the ABS, and he's identified two types of hitters who are going to probably be helped by this. One, really short guys like Jose Altuve, like Tim Kirkchin, like myself potentially, and then really tall guys like Aaron Judge. In your eyes, how much could Judge benefit from the challenge system?
I think he'll benefit because he knows the strike zone. So I think those guys that are really adept at knowing the zone, obviously he is an outlier on the ball down, as are, Giancarlo and other large guys like that. So I think that's one thing we've noticed with this, because the strike zone just on balance is going to shrink a little north and south again. Um, for guys like Judge, it's gonna shrink southwise. So I think one of the biggest adjustments is going to be for pitchers to really, I think they establish the bottom of the strike zone on a given outing with the given umpire, and you kind of know what it is. Well, like we know that changes every batter. And, you got a 5'8" guy, and then all of a sudden the next guy's a 6'3" guy. You got to recalibrate a little bit, especially, guys with command. So that'll be one of the nuanced challenge things that, you got to learn as you go a little bit.
Yeah, and it feels like Max Fried is one of those pitchers, right? He pitches typically to the bottom of the zone a lot, so that will be interesting. What sort of guidelines have you given your players as spring training begins, and when do you think you guys will start to talk about your general rules for challenges in the regular season?
Well, we've already talked about it, our general philosophy and general rules.
Okay.
That being said, I expect it to evolve. I expect it to evolve in spring training. I expect it to evolve throughout the season. The biggest thing is I trust our guys uh, as a group, that we're gonna be really good at knowing the strike zone and being successful. And I view it as something that we expect to be good at. We expect to be the best at. So that's how we're shaping it. I think really when we can here, we try and, all our live BPs or things in the cages we have set up are all geared around ABS. And so guys can, literally play the game as they're, taking their BP and things like that. Um, Understanding who they are, what their strike zone is, of course, understanding if we're facing an opposing team or a specific pitcher, if there's any outlier trends with them. Like, we know there's some guys that don't get the ball called up because of their angle and their, or glove side, they tend to get a favorable strike zone just because of the angles they create out there. So I want to make sure our guys know that inherently. We got to develop the instinct. So much of baseball is your lifelong experience, and everything's instinctual. So we want to get really good at just being instinctual in the moment of understanding leverage. Like, this is a bad challenge. This is a really good challenge. This is time to be aggressive. I think on whole, we want our guys to be aggressive, and that doesn't mean saving them for late in the game. Like,
Okay.
uh, I do the one thing I want you to think the umpire got it wrong. That's the first criteria. But I also want us to be aggressive with it. So, that being said, if we're down to one challenge and it's the fourth inning with two outs and nobody on, and we challenge a 1-0 pitch and we're wrong, that's a bad challenge to me. Okay, but um, so that the other thing is really trying to hammer down with our guys, like removing emotion as best we can. So, and I think that's going to be one of the really tough things for pitchers, is to, let's say you're in a jam in the fifth, big spot, couple guys on,
2-2 count.
2-2 count, strike three, boom, we're out of the inning. Exhale, challenge overturned. You got to, that's a new skill to learn all of a sudden now. You just exhaled and kind of, I'm walking off the mound to all of a sudden you're right back in the fire making a pitch. We've got to be able to handle that. And that's going to be a challenge. Similar for hitters, but I envision pitchers in that big moment where that could be a little bit of a challenge. We got to be able to handle that. And then the other thing is like, I want our catchers to feel empowered. I want them to feel really confident. Like, so let's say, take Max Fried just because obviously he's a great pitcher. I don't anticipate this necessarily happening with him, but let's say Austin Wells misses a call, you know, in a spot, doesn't challenge it. Find out later he should have challenged it. Boom, they scored a run or two off that. It's like the next game with Max, like not just I can't let one go by again. Like you got to be convicted. You got to feel confident in what you're doing and not let something that just happened affect you. We've had a lot of success the last couple of days in our games, and we've challenged quite a bit, and our guys have been successful. But like Trent Grisham had one yesterday where he challenged one in the first inning, right out of the chute, first batter, got it right, and then his next at bat, there was a pitch called strike one against him. He's like, I think that's a ball, but he held back, didn't challenge. Then he gets rung up on a backdoor breaking ball, and he challenged. And I think it was part like I didn't the
Yes.
last one, but I know this one maybe was a strike, and it's like, boom, no, we got to remove that. It's like as much
It's like
as
a
we
basketball
can.
player making back-to-back mistakes, turning over a ball, then fouling on defense,
Yeah,
right?
we got it. Yeah, so I want our guys to, as much as you can, remove emotion from these things. But we're gonna be aggressive. We don't want to, you can't take them home with you. So, and I think that notion of we got to save them for the last 3 innings. I think what we've seen in kind of studying this over the last couple of years is, um, you end up not challenging really impactful pitches, and you end up going to sleep at night with 1 or 2 challenges in your pocket because you didn't want to challenge a key pitch in the 5th. Like, I think that's a mistake. So we got to strike that balance. Then there's obviously more urgency as you get later in the game, and you do have a couple challenges. Now we're going to get even more aggressive.
So I talked to folks with other teams who basically they don't want their pitchers to be the ones who challenge, and you guys happen to have one of the best pitch framers, if we want to refer to it that way, in Wells. Was there any? Did you guys kick that around about the idea? Well, let's leave pitchers out of it because, as you say, with emotion, the catcher might have a better idea. Or do you just want pitchers to be as aggressive as hitters as catchers?
Yeah, I would say I don't want the pitchers to be as aggressive, but as of now, they are not allowed to challenge. That
Okay.
said, we've tried to educate them of where do catchers miss, where do pitchers miss. Pitchers often miss on a well executed pitch that a catcher really makes look good. So that pitch on the corner that they stick, they catch perfect. It's perfect execution. That's the one where we found the pitchers get fooled. The ones where the catchers maybe get a little fooled is that missed spot. Right, they're set up away. They missed with the pitch across the plate, so they reach for it, but it's still on the plate. That's one where we found that pitchers can identify. And then the portions of the zone where it is going to be overall, I think, look, this is a hitter friendly thing. But there are a couple of those spots that those corners up and away, the corners down away, that breaking ball that you kind of don't clip, that is for most of our life has always been a ball, and it's not a great executed pitch, but it clips that top corner of the zone. That's the one where, there's some opportunities to grab for our catchers and our pitchers.
Boone, you may have noticed in your time as manager of the Yankees, you've gotten some attention for your interactions with umpires.
Mhm.
How is the challenge system impacting that? How do you think it will impact it?
Um, I don't think, I think I'll still be similar in jockeying. Like, the last thing I want to see is a team's out of challenges. We're out of challenges, and what we've seen some at the minor league level is that impacts the umpires strike zone a little bit. When they know a team's out of challenge, I don't think on purpose. I just think there's a human element to that where I know this team is challenged. They've been wrong. Does that zone increase just inherently against our hitters?
Right.
So that's one that I'll be constantly trying to jockey a little bit and have those conversations, make sure that zone remains the same. I don't know. There'll be a unintended thing that ticks you off about this too that I'm sure will rear its head.
All right, maybe the coolest thing that I've seen in your camp so far from afar is Gerrit Cole and his initial showing. And there feels like there's a lot of optimism about how he's coming along and when he might return. What can you tell us?
I would just tell you he looks great. I don't think it's going to speed anything up. Like, even though he probably would be ready. We're going to be disciplined to the timeline and to make sure, like, his rehab process, I think, has gone really well and been a success. And, we don't want to take any step backs. And again, at the end of the day, we're talking about a pitcher that, threw 0 innings last year. And it's like to try and push him to get him back earlier, to put an extra 50 innings and hopefully we're in a situation where we're playing October baseball. We don't want him to be in a scenario where he's throwing, up 150, 200 innings, say, this year. But I would say he looks phenomenal. Like, his bullpens are, it's a different level. And, you're talking about a guy that's been obviously really one of his calling cards in his career has been his durability. And I think the last few years, though, there was that wear and tear. Even in the Cy Young year in 23, I think he was starting to deal with just harder recovery. And it's like, man, he's got a new arm now. He's got a new elbow. And I think he's feeling that. And to watch him throw a bullpen right now is like, it's close to perfection. I mean, it's really impressive how, I liken it to like an S55 Mercedes that's driving down the Autobahn at 130 miles an hour and looks like he's going 60. Like, it's just his delivery, mechanics, command is all just really, really impressive.
Last one for you. As you know, there was some criticism of the Yankees during the offseason because you didn't, match the Dodgers for big moves. You didn't match the Mets for big moves. But I do think what Brian Cashman said was right in that there's so many parts of your roster where there's growth potential. Guys like Ben Rice, you think of what he might do this year. Austin Wells, as he gets older and, coming back from last year, your play at shortstop, generally speaking, it feels like that, you could see step forward for a lot of guys on your roster this year.
Without question. And then obviously the guys that, we hope to get back in Gerrit Cole, what we think Ryan Weathers can be. And then, look, we had some issues to work through in the summer months last year, but I think the front office and Brian did a great job of addressing those, but they weren't all short-term fixes. They were geared towards this year too. So bringing in Rosario, Caballero, Duvall, Bednar, Ryan Weathers, like, really solidified and completed our team in a lot of ways. And look, at the end of the day, we lost in the postseason last year. I get that. But like, we had a really good team at the end of the year last year. And we got beat. Simple as that by obviously a really good Blue Jay team that was playing unbelievable at the time, and they kicked our butt. But like, that doesn't change the fact that I think we're really good. About as good a team as I think I've had here at that point of the season. We just got beaten a series. And again, I think the additions that we brought in to kind of fill out our roster that complemented our roster and brought some impact players too. I think we're in a really good position right now. The division's great. I think everyone would acknowledge that. So it's going to be a challenge, but I really like our club. And, before long here, we get to start going to prove it.
All right, Booney. Thanks for doing this. I'll see you in a couple days.
All right. Thanks, Buster. See you, bud.
And in other notes, how about the spring showing of Konnor Griffin, that incredible prospect that the Pittsburgh Pirates have? Hembo talked about him in his segment he just had, and then a couple of hours later, Konnor Griffin hit 2 home runs against the Red Sox. Listen to this one.
Oh, now the fly ball here for Konnor Griffin. That is up towards the green monster and long gone.
Lou Maloney with that, reaction to how hard that ball was hit. So, yeah, Konnor Griffin already getting attention in this spring training. The Atlanta Braves announced on Tuesday that they are starting their own local television home called Braves Vision. And according to reports, they're also looking to potentially acquire the rights of other Atlanta sports teams to round out their programming there. So that's something worth watching going forward. A lot of teams are sort of folding their TV rights into Major League Baseball, not the Atlanta Braves. The Milwaukee Brewers added infielder Luis Rengifo, 1-year deal, $2 million. Chicago Cubs signed Michael Conforto to a minor league deal that will net him $2 million if he makes the Major League team.
Oakland Athletics.
The A's are developing a really great core of position players. Jacob Wilson and Nick Kurtz have joined Brent Rooker, Shea Langoliers, and Tyler Soderstrom. The team that plays in Sacramento went 76-86 last season, making opponents uncomfortable with their offense.
Newcomers.
The A's traded for outfielder Jeff McNeil, signed Mark Leiter Jr. and starting pitcher Aaron Savali.
Reality injection.
If the A's are going to progress, they really need more from Luis Severino, who was the team's big free agent signing a year ago, before he crashed out to a 4.54 ERA in 29 starts.
Win projections.
Sarah believes the A's are headed toward a record identical to last year, 76-86. Pacoda says 76.8. I say 77 wins. That's what Hembo landed on, too, 77 wins.
San Francisco Giants.
After a frustrating 2025 season that ended with the Giants sitting at a mediocre 81-81, they fired manager Bob Melvin and turned to Tony Vitello, the longtime coach of the University of Tennessee Volunteers. As head coach of baseball operations, Buster Posey looked for a spark.
Newcomers.
Besides Vitello and a whole lot of new coaches, San Francisco signed Luis Arraez to play second base, Tyler Mahle and Adrian Hauser for their starting rotation, and Harrison Bader to play center field, with Jung-Hoo Lee now moving to right field.
Reality injection.
The Giants could vie for the playoffs if Rafael Devers hits, if the Giants' infield defense supports Logan Webb and Robbie Ray, if Vitello meshes with his players and runs the bullpen efficiently. This is the biggest question that some evaluators have about Vitello. Without experience managing through a long major league season, will he burn out the relievers?
Win projections.
Sarah Lang thinks the Giants will finish second in the National League West, but a distant second with just 82 wins. Hembo's got them for 83 wins. Pacoda, 81.6. I think they'll get to 84 wins, but miss the playoffs.
Alrighty, Buster. Bleacher Tweets for a Wednesday. Let's go to Ryan from Lincoln. He writes, awesome to see the podcast and video. Who knew Taylor would have facial hair? I did. Anyway, the momentarily...
I haven't known you when you didn't have facial hair, correct?
Yeah.
You've had a beard the whole time we've been doing the podcast with you.
Yeah, I haven't shaved my beard off since 2014. Almost did it this summer, but yeah, it's still
Were you
sticking
like
with
12 when you started your beard?
I started growing beards when I was probably 18, and I would do it for a couple months out of the year. And then 2014, I don't know what gripped me, but it's been here since. So, and my wife loves it, so I don't think it's going anywhere.
Well, there you go. I mean, she's in charge.
She is. Ryan wants to know, what is a reasonable goal for the Washington Nationals this year in their new front office? 75 wins, stay out of the bottom 5 of the league, avoid a season sweep to the Mets. Looking forward to seeing how you guys manage the clown car.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if they could get to 75 wins. Look, they're clearly resetting. They're doing what, we've seen the Miami Marlins do, what the Minnesota Twins should do. And so I think they'll take a step back. When you trade your best starting pitcher, Mackenzie Gore, and I'm sure during the course of the year, if somebody steps up and gives them a good offer for C.J. Abrams, they'll probably make a deal. They're buying time for this rebuild.
Coach Sorensen writes in, Buster, first of all, I got to mention, hold on, let me redo that. Coach Sorensen writes in, Buster, all the videos of our guy Ryan Divish on Cade Anderson this spring. Dude looks absolutely filthy. What are the only odds he will see the big leagues this year? Cade Anderson, by the way, for those at home, he's a pitcher for the Mariners. He's their number 2 prospect, and he was the number 3 overall pick in the 2025 draft.
Right. He's been a high-end prospect. Even as the Mariners were making trades for guys like Brandon Nonavan, they held on to their very best prospects. And so it's exciting to see what he could be. And at some point, the guys currently in the rotation, the Logan Gilberts, Bryce Millers, unless they pay those guys, they're going to have to cycle them out. So Cade Anderson is a really exciting player.
Edward Rockman writes in a couple shout-outs here. He says, it was fun seeing y'all on the YouTube broadcast. It was like meeting an old friend all over again. Keep it up. Sean writes, congrats on the new YouTube format. Sounds like you've been putting a lot of work in there. However, I only listen to the audio format. I beg you not to change the podcast in ways that audio-only fans will get left behind. Sean, you guys got us here. So we will, the audio podcast, like you've seen little tweaks off the top, but we're trying to keep the show, basically the same.
Yeah, it's basically going to be the same, but because... Look, if you're working in television, anybody knows you got to grab people's attention in the first 30, 40 seconds. And so that's why I think we hit some of the main topics right off the bat. And we'll have highlights during the year, but they'll be in the middle of the show rather than at the top.
Right on. Last one here, Noah Castrol, our guy, a belated IOU to Taylor. Because of his Orioles knowledge, I've gotten to know all about Ryan O'Hearn, and I feel well-equipped to say I love what my Buccos did in adding an asset this offseason. Hembo doesn't love their offseason, but Ryan O'Hearn, quality addition. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, he's a quality major league hitter. They've added quality major league hitters up and down that lineup. It'll be interesting to see how that depth translates. And what Taylor's referring to, if you didn't hear it, Hembo has real concerns about their defense. And wonders if that's going to undercut, what they're trying to do to take a step forward this year and prove themselves to Paul Skeens.
That's it for Bleacher Tweets. Hashtag Bleacher Tweets on X. BleacherTweets@gmail.com is the email address. Check out the number in our show notes. We'll be back on Friday. Thanks, everyone.
All right, that's it for today. As always, my thanks to Taylor. Does a great job with this podcast. To Aaron Boone, thanks to him for joining us. Paul Mbakidis, Sarah Lang's helping out. Thanks for listening. Stay safe. And remember, hate and inequality based on skin color is something we need to fight against every single day.